Welcome to Wiser. Today we will be discovering the man who survived 2 atomic bombings. The story starts in 1916. A man by the name of Tsutomu Yamaguchi was born in Nagasaki, Japan. He grew up to join Mitsubishi Heavy Industries in the 1930s and worked as a draftsman, designing oil tankers for the company. In the early months of 1945, Yamaguchi, now aged 29, was staying in Hiroshima for a few months on business for Mitsubishi. Then, on the 6th of August, whilst preparing to leave back home to Nagasaki, Hiroshima became the first city to be targeted by a nuclear weapon, and the US dropped an atomic bomb on the city. At the time of the attack, Yamaguchi was walking to the Mitsubishi shipyard for the last time. He heard the drone of an aircraft overhead and saw the bomber drop a small object connected to a parachute. Then a blinding flash in the sky. He was just 2 miles from ground zero and had only enough time to dive into a ditch before the shockwave hit. The force pulled Yamaguchi up out of the ditch and launched him into a nearby potato patch. The bomb was named Little Boy, and its uranium payload gave a blast yield of 15 kilotons. The explosion itself killed an estimated 70,000 people and completely destroyed 70% of the city. By the end of the year, the death toll had increased to between 90,000 and 166,000 people. But against all odds, Yamaguchi survived, and when he opened his eyes, everything was dark. The sun had nearly been hidden by the dust and ash. He could see the mushroom cloud of fire rising in the sky over Hiroshima. Yamaguchi suffered severe burns to his face and forearms, and both of his eardrums were ruptured. Shortly after, he came across 2 of his co-workers who had also survived the blast, and spent the night with them in an air raid shelter. The next day, they made their way through the nightmarish landscape towards the train station, which was somehow still functional, and boarded a train back home to Nagasaki, arriving on the morning of the 8th. Yamaguchi received treatment for his injuries, and by the next day, August 9th, despite everything, he reported for work at Mitsubishi's Nagasaki office. Yamaguchi was in a meeting with the company director, giving a full report on the events in Hiroshima. The director would not believe that the whole city had been destroyed by a single bomb, accusing Yamaguchi of having gone insane. At this moment, the landscape outside the office suddenly lit up with another blinding white flash, and Yamaguchi dropped to the floor as the shockwave ripped through the office, shattering windows and sending debris flying across the room. Years later, in an interview, Yamaguchi said that in that moment, he thought that the mushroom cloud had followed him from Hiroshima. The second bomb was called Fat Man, and it was even more powerful than the last explosion. Its plutonium payload gave a blast yield of 21 kilotons, 6 more than Little Boy. Immediate casualties range from between 35 to 40,000 people, but these estimates are not precise. In the days and months following, the estimated death toll increased to a possible 80,000. Yet again, for the second time in 3 days, Yamaguchi was within just 2 miles of ground zero, and again, against all odds, he survived. Other than the wave of radiation, he emerged from the building unhurt. He was saved by the reinforced stairwell which protected him from the brunt of the blast. After leaving the skeleton of the Mitsubishi building and fearing for the lives of his family in Nagasaki, he made his way through the destruction to his home. Part of his house had been reduced to rubble, but his wife and son were alive and only received minor injuries. They had been out looking for ointment to soothe his burns when the explosion happened, and were able to hide in a tunnel. Had Yamaguchi not been hurt in Hiroshima, his family might have been killed at Nagasaki. In the following days, the radiation that Yamaguchi had been exposed to took its toll. He became very sick, his hair fell out, and the wounds on his arms became gangrenous. Almost a week later, whilst he and his family stayed in a bomb shelter, the Emperor of Japan announced the country's surrender. Yamaguchi was extremely unlucky to have been present at and so close to both nuclear detonations. But unlike many victims exposed to the blast, he slowly recovered, only having lost the hearing in his left ear, and went on to live a mostly normal life. During the occupation of Japan by Allied forces, he worked as a translator and later returned to his job at Mitsubishi. In the 1950s, he had 2 more children, and in 1957, he was recognized by the Japanese government as one of the hibakusha, those that survived an atomic bombing. At this time, it was not known that Yamaguchi had survived both bombings, only Nagasaki, and he did not feel any need to bring attention to the fact. In later life, he wrote about his experiences, both a book retelling his story and a book of poetry, and took part in a 2006 documentary about his story. He also became a prominent voice of nuclear disarmament, sharing his story and the horrors of atomic weapons that he had witnessed. In 2009, Yamaguchi considered his survival of both bombings as destiny, and applied for double recognition. He became the only person officially recognized as a survivor of both nuclear attacks. Yamaguchi said that his official record of double radiation exposure can tell the younger generation the horrifying history of the atomic bombings, even after his death. Yamaguchi passed away a year later, at the age of 93, still in Nagasaki. To those affected in any way by the bombings, you have my utmost respect. This is an incredible story that I hope teaches the truly horrifying impact of nuclear weapons. For further information, links and details to the books written by Yamaguchi are in the description. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell if you want to see the next video. If you wish to support the channel, my Patreon link is in the description. Check out my previous videos if you want to watch more. Thanks again, I'll see you next time.